If you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. Buckminster Fuller. I'm John Rose. And I created that tool. I call it the ultimate schematic. Now, I know a lot of you guys are a little intimidated by my tool, and a lot of you guys haven't even looked at it. And that's really a shame, because this tool uses knowledge in a way that's never been seen before. Yes, it requires a little bit of effort on your part to understand it, but this is the most powerful tool on this planet. And I can't help but think that this tool existed before, and that I somehow created it when I tried to explain everything. But after I've looked at it, I said to myself, I can't be the only one who's ever come up with this. And I've looked and looked to find anybody that might talk about this. Excuse me for a second. Got something in my eye. And I haven't really found anything, although I did find a book that I had on my computer for about a decade until I finally got around to reading it. It was The Essene Teachings from Enoch to the Dead Sea Scroll. And in this book they talked about the Essenes and how they would split everyone's life into 3 sections. And those 3 sections tie into the 3 stages of knowledge in my special teaching tool. Powerful, powerful, powerful information. And I was amazed that they used the exact same words that I used in the very beginning, where I say, in the first stage is where we acquire the knowledge, then we apply it in the second stage, then we manifest in the third stage. And they used the exact same words, acquired, applied, and manifested. It blew me away. But what really blew me away about that book was that it talked about how Moses, while he was fasting, learned that there was one law, and that the ignorance of this law, laws of nature, was responsible for all evils, the laws of nature. It confirmed what I've been concluding after extensive research on this subject and contemplation. I've been studying this for a long time. I've taken the best of everybody and I've come up with my own little version. And then, the same year I read that book, it's only a couple years ago, I read that great essay by Tolstoy, which also confirmed that I'm on the right page. Tolstoy said the same thing. All of our problems has to do with our addiction to our evil way of life. We have no control. We don't have any at all. And we're a bunch of gluttons. And his first step was to take a solid food vacation on water. Now the Essenes, that's the same thing they were talking about. They were taking solid food vacations on water, and they're following a raw vegan diet. It only makes sense. How can we be the only species that somehow can alter their food and not get away with it? And then, of course, be in such denial about it that we think, oh, well, this can't be the original mistake. No, it was something else. We'll blame it on the other people out there on the other planets. It's spiritual or whatever. It's another way to take away our responsibility. One law. This is chapter 2 in that book. Check it out. I'm sure you can find it online. It was a fascinating book. The Essene Teachings from Enoch to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Chapter 2, the one law. And that's what Moses figured out. Again, there's 3 stages in his life. The last third of his life, let's go this way. The last third of his life, he devoted to doing the same thing I'm doing. Helping people realize this one law and for us to live in harmony with the laws of nature. And he concluded the same thing I had concluded. That there are 2 huge obstacles. One is our belief system, the ignorant masses, and the other is the arrogant rulers, according to Moses. And that's why my message is focusing on these 2 pieces. It has to do with our health. We don't know how to live. It has to do with what happens when we don't know how to live and we have evil people taking advantage of the situation, keeping us where we are. That's just how it is. Sickness begets sickness. The status quo wants the status quo to remain the status quo. And very few people have a chance to be able to really make sense out of all this. Excuse me, I still can't get that thing out of me. All right. Because we have so many pages that have been put into our books, we have no idea. Remember, an idea, as opposed to a belief, an idea is just like a tabletop without any legs or the covers of a book without any pages. And then the references are the legs and the pages. Most of us have no idea that we have certain books that have been planted inside of our brains to make us think a certain way, and over 90% of those pages have been put in without us even knowing about it. Now, a small percentage of those were put in intentionally. When we go to school, we're indoctrinated, at least we are here in America, into believing a version of what happened last century, and it's not true. And then, as we go throughout life, every day we're putting more pages in those books and we're unaware of it. So when we try to objectively look at another version, it's hard to look at it objectively because we think, well, this confirms what I already know. Got a lot of references that make me believe this is true. And it's all geared toward one law. That's the most important thing. The most important thing for the rulers of the world to remain the rulers of the world is to keep us sick. That's why they control what they teach our doctors. They put them inside of a box and it's difficult to get outside that box. That's why they put nutritionists in that same box. And people who study philosophy or religion or logic or anything, they're all put in little bitty boxes. Science, the same thing. And once you've been put in that box, it's almost impossible to get out of it. And then they don't teach critical thinking skills, which pretty much guarantees that we'll remain inside this box forever. But it's not complicated. It all has to do with the knowledge that we're acquiring, and we're not acquiring the right knowledge. That's why the two biggest problems, the ignorant masses and the arrogant rulers. It's so simple. It really boggles my mind how simple it is to turn this planet all the way around. It begins with the first step, Tolstoy. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'll put a link down below. I highly recommend it to refresh your memory, or if you haven't heard the story yet. Tolstoy translated this amazing book called The Ethics of Diet by Howard Williams. And it was filled with like 85 of some of the greatest thinkers several millennia ago, all throughout this time. And they paid attention. They said, look, you can tell how people act by what they eat. It's obvious. The worse the food, the worse the behavior. And what's happening to us, right? So anyway, Tolstoy read this book and he embraced it. He understood it. And then he wrote this 25-page essay as a foreword to the book he translated into Russian. And what was interesting about Tolstoy, he's famous for his writing for War and Peace and Anna Karenina, but he really wanted to be more famous or more well known of for his views on religion and other things like that. And he even wanted to have his own type of religion because he saw the ones that we're using now, there's too many flaws in it. There's too much hypocrisy. And he came to that one conclusion, that we don't have self-control. The Christians call it self-renunciation. And as he pointed out in his video, that Christians tend to focus on those higher virtues, saying, look at me, look how good I am, look at all the good things I'm doing. Good job, we like that. But then they don't understand the significance of the first virtue. It all begins with self-control. And he said it's like going from the first story of a house to the second story. You got to start at the first step. We struggle with the higher virtues because we don't start with the first step. That's self-control. And it all has to do with gluttony. Remember what Bishop Carlton Pierce said one time? Pearson said that sin came into our mouth through eating. That's why fasting means literally to cover the mouth. That's why it is the first step on this journey. And remember, the journey we're on right now has been made available to us by the cumulative people from many generations. And let's hope that this is the last generation that we have to keep going this direction until we wake up. And we can leave the twilight zone we're in right now, where we prey upon ourselves and we suffer. We shouldn't be living this way at all. There's a simple solution. Most people don't have the fortitude to make better dietary choices. It's hard. It's difficult to break away from the direction everyone else is going. That's why you got to take a solid food vacation. On water, on juices, I believe juices are the easiest way to go for everybody. Few of us have the luxury to take a vacation from life, and few of us are healthy enough to even do a water fast. Although it's better than what they're doing now, even though there are pitfalls to doing a water fast now because of all the environmental toxins and because of the toxicities and deficiencies that we have inside of us. It makes a solid food vacation on water a little more difficult. But a solid food vacation on juices is a piece of cake. And it solves so many problems. And why is that? It cleans the 2 bathrooms that are causing most of our problems. And most importantly, it bumps up this coherent sunlight energy that we're missing in the nucleus of our cells. And now one of our senses is too low and is keeping us from being the best that we can be. All of my videos are about the same thing because it's not complicated. We need a new tool. If you haven't studied my ultimate schematic yet, it's not that complicated. It just takes a little bit of work. In fact, if you can play 2 square, you can understand how my special teaching tool works. It's not complicated whatsoever. It's as simple as ABC, 1, 2, 3, pluses and minuses. That's all it is. Every box logically connects the other boxes. I'll put a link down below, and I'll see if there's another link I'm going to put up there. Someone else watched my video and gave his analysis of it, and it's quite insightful to see someone else coming at it, explaining it from his perspective. But he spent a lot of time. He watched my videos 2 and 3 times each. Remember, I have an 11-part video series that goes into detail. So I have the ultimate schematic, but I also have the ultimate solution. 11-part playlist where I explain all 281 pieces that I've identified. And again, one man I met, we talked every day. He'd come up to me and say, you know, I watched those videos 2 or 3 times and I learned something every time I watch them. When you're talking about something this profound, when you're talking about something that can do away with most of our problems, war, crime, violence, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, you don't think this is important? It behooves every one of us to understand how to use this tool so we can then do what Sherlock Holmes would do, exclude the impossible. That's how this special teaching tool works. Because the people who rule the world are masters of magicians, or masters of illusion. They're magicians, they're con artists, they're psychopaths. It's all a magic act, it's one big con. In fact, if you have not studied the Con Artist Handbook, you're doing yourself a disservice, just like you haven't studied my special teaching tool, the Ultimate Schematic. Because if you haven't studied the Con Artist Handbook, you're not going to be able to understand how you're being tricked. And most of you won't. Now, some of y'all are waking up to this pretty easily. But you have to understand the MO of a psychopath. They're all habitual liars. When you're trying to help people with the truth, they can only do certain things, and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to rely on emotion. Again, Google the Con Artist Handbook. I'll see if I'm pretty sure I can find a link. I'll put it down below in the description box. Study that. It behooves you to understand how people can take advantage of you, or what they're going to do just on something simple like a message board, where instead of even addressing the issue, they'll rely on those big pages that have all those references. See, they know that. They know they put a book inside of us that has so many references that make you believe something, that when someone says, well, what about this, the person won't even address it, and then they'll go to the emotion instead and say something like, well, just have to look at just remember the pictures. And then the pictures aren't a true reflection, or the caption of what's happening isn't a reflection of what really did happen. Again, they're playing upon our emotions. We need a new tool so we don't get tricked and fooled. It's called Mona's Ponens. Put the cart before the horse. I explain all that in my special teaching tool. Again, I have an 11-part video series. And it's a lot of information. I understand that. But I can't think of anything else more important than putting an end to the suffering, putting an end to crime, putting an end to hunger on this planet. My God, think about that. In fact, if someone just said, I have a solution for this one disease, wouldn't you want to know it and spend at least 3 hours to figure it out? I'm talking about a solution for virtually all of these problems. It's not complicated. There is a oneness of disease, but then there's that uniqueness of disease because we've been damaged. The environment's damaged. I explain all that in my special teaching tool, my 11-part video series, The Ultimate Solution. And I guarantee you, when you can get that under your belt and use it in life, you're in for a treat.